We all need jobs to earn money to live our lives, but everyone at some point has found themselves working for organizations that don't exactly treat their staff as well as they should. There are countless stories of terrible bosses who sometimes appear as if they're doing everything they can to find an excuse to get rid of some of their employees. And while most sackings are usually justified, you won't believe some of the reasons some staff have been terminated for. You better check your employment contract, because it's time to look at 15 ridiculous ways people got fired. Number 15. Underground dancing. We've all been bored at work and look for fun ways to pass the time, but even doing something as harmless as dancing together can be given as a reason for getting the boot. That's exactly what happened to 15 Australian miners a few years ago, when they performed a group dance underground during a break. After practicing the Harlem Shake, their final attempt was videoed and uploaded to YouTube, and it was an instant hit, being shared around the world because of the upbeat vibes. Unfortunately, the management at the Agnew gold mine didn't see it the same way and fired them all from their six-figure salary jobs on the spot. According to the dismissal letter, the dance had contravened safety requirements in the mine, and even though only 8 people were featured in the video, another 7 also lost their jobs simply for watching it being filmed. What made things even worse is that at the time, around 4,000 videos of people doing the Harlem Shake were being uploaded per day, many of which were made by other groups of work colleagues and even other miners. So why were these ones singled out? Unsurprisingly, the tribunal that investigated whether this was a case of unfair dismissal, the ruling went with the employees, and within a few weeks they all had been offered their jobs back, although this time they were expressly told not to film dances on company time or property. Number 14. For being Santa. You always know it's getting close to Christmas when stores around the world build grottos so families can visit Santa Claus. But there was a surprising case in Australia where their Santa was sacked for performing his job in a traditional way. When you think of the catchphrases you'd expect to hear Santa say, one of them is "ho ho ho." But on this occasion, Santa, who had worked at the department store for 3 years, was sacked for saying it. And that's because according to the employment agency, Santas had been instructed to say "ha ha ha," because the word "ho" is a slang term in Africa for something else entirely. They claim that the 70-year-old had a bad attitude and refused to change the script, which would risk offending parents and encouraging children to use a word they didn't fully understand. Amazingly, the reason for the termination was upheld by the courts, but you can't help but feel that some of the managers at the employment agency may well have been put on the naughty list that year and are most likely in line for a stocking full of coal for many years to come. Number 13. Making a TikTok. TikTok has undoubtedly been the breakout social media success of recent years, giving its users a new way to make content and share it with the world. It's not unusual for people to record videos at work to upload to the platform, and while many companies are usually quite happy for this to happen because of the free exposure it can give them, managers have often been known to suddenly change their attitude when they think posts have gone too far. A 19-year-old Starbucks employee in Indiana was, for example, fired for a video he uploaded in September of 2020 that showed how he and his co-workers wished they could respond to customers who came in with terrible attitudes or unreasonable demands. It's quite a common trend on the platform, but his managers weren't exactly impressed. Despite his protests that the store had been closed and empty at the time, nothing was broken or stolen, and that they were all just having some fun after a long shift, Starbucks insisted that there was an expectation that employees create a respectful and welcoming environment for customers, and that a video like this directly contravenes that. What do you think? Was it right that he lost his job, or was Starbucks being completely unreasonable? Number 12. Wearing orange. Most companies have some form of dress code for their employees, and even when you aren't in a customer-facing role, it's usually expected that you maintain a certain level of professionalism to help create a good working environment. Despite this, it would usually be seen as an extreme abuse of power to fire someone solely based on what they chose to wear to work on a single day. But amazingly, that's what happened to 14 employees of a Florida law firm. There had long been a tradition at the firm that workers would wear orange shirts on Fridays, so that at the end of the day when they all went out together for drinks, it would be clear that they were all in a group together. The owners of the firm saw the benefit in this because it helped to create a close-knit team, but things changed when the company was brought under new management. On the first Friday, the 14 staff who were wearing orange shirts were called into the conference room, and one of the managers said that they understood the choice of orange was a form of protest, and that everyone involved was fired immediately. Because of the laws in Florida, this action was perfectly legal, but after the resulting outcry, some of the staff were offered their jobs back. Still, there were many who suspected the new management had simply used it as an excuse to cut down on their staffing numbers. Number 11. Gangnam Style firing. One of the most famous dances of recent memory is Gangnam Style, which took the world by storm when it was released in 2012. It seemed just about everyone everywhere was doing the moves, from kids at school to elderly relatives at weddings, but not everyone took it in such light spirits. In another case of a video being uploaded online that resulted in ridiculous consequences, a group of 14 lifeguards from El Monte Aquatic Center in California found themselves in hot water when the management saw the recording of them performing the dance at a pool. They had put their own spin on it with synchronized swimming, well-timed and complicated choreography, and of course, plenty of hip thrusting. Described by bosses as inappropriate and disgusting, everyone involved in the recording, mostly being students, were fired straight away. And this even resulted in the pool having to operate reduced opening hours until more lifeguards could be hired. In the end, though, all of them were offered their jobs back after the El Monte City Council voted in favor of adjusting the swimming pool's management and procedures. Number 10. Using all caps in an email. If you've ever worked at an office job, you're probably more than aware that colleagues prefer things being done in a certain way. Maybe it's the use of a specific color of blue on a spreadsheet, or a favorite font that all documents should be written in. And for the most part, even though it might be annoying, we all find a way to manage it. There's always someone in the office who does something a little different, though. But is this a fair reason for losing their job? An accountant from New Zealand found herself in this position for the way she wrote internal emails to other employees of the company. She wrote a series of what were said to be confrontational messages, which were read in bold and in all capital letters. It's certainly feasible that this could have come across in the wrong way. After all, if you write in all caps, it's usually interpreted as shouting. But surely someone could have had a quiet word with her to tone things down. With the official reason for her firing being that she had, quote, caused disharmony in the workplace by using block capitals, bold typeface, and red text in her emails, end quote. Her former employers were eventually forced to pay her equivalent of $11,500 of compensation. Number 9. A cockroach on TV. One of the best things about watching live TV is that when things go wrong, the host can't prepare for, and you get a glimpse of that moment when panic covers their faces as they try to work out what to do next. Normally, TV companies see this as one of the costs of live broadcasts, but there's one channel where mistakes are never allowed to happen, the state news channel of Turkmenistan. The country's leader is renowned for his eccentricities and questionable behavior towards the citizens, and probably one of the best examples of this came in the wake of a 9 p.m. broadcast of the leading current affairs show called Vatan. At one point, a cockroach was seen crawling across the newsreader's desk, and this was too much for some people. The station received an influx of complaints, with some saying that it had put them off their dinner, and it was so controversial that the president stepped in to resolve matters. Rather than insisting that the studio was cleaned, as most people would, he instead sacked 30 people, including the newsreader, journalists, directors, camera operators, and other various technical staff. A full investigation into the incident was also ordered too, which seems like somewhat of an overreaction. Unfortunately for the employees who lost their jobs, there was no way to challenge the decision, and many of them have now been forced to leave the country to find work in the media elsewhere. We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Doing your job. Every decent publication has a cartoonist on staff to provide comedic interludes into the otherwise text-heavy publications. For Iowa's Farm News, this was Rick Friday, who had held the position for 21 years and was somewhat of a local celebrity because of the way he poked fun at the agriculture industry. It appears, though, that even free speech has its limits, and he went too far with a cartoon that lampooned the Monsanto, DuPont Pioneer, and John Deere companies. The point he was making was about the huge disparity between what farmers earn and what the head of those companies earn. But as a result of this, a seed company pulled its sponsorship of the weekly. The only way they'd agree to resume funding was if Rick Friday lost his job, so the editor has no choice but to let him go. This in itself caused waves, so the story ended well for Friday, who was eventually given his job back after the big agriculture companies backed off for fear of even more bad press. Number 7. The coach that won too much. When you look at the world of sports, there's only one thing the head coach is responsible for, and that's winning. Rightly or wrongly, they get away with atrocious behavior so long as their team keeps on the right side of the score sheet. And those that don't get enough wins will soon find themselves looking for a new career path. It's highly unusual to hear of a coach who's lost his position because of winning by too much. But that's exactly what happened to Coach Micah Grimes, who was the head of the Covenant School girls basketball team in Texas. During a game with Dallas Academy, they went on to win by 100-0, which was by far the highest winning margin ever seen in the league. Instead of being celebrated, Grimes found himself in trouble, with school authorities saying it was hardly teaching students the ideals of good sportsmanship. It definitely wouldn't have happened in the pro leagues, but do you think this decision was the right one? Number 6. For saving a customer. It's understandable that if you're hired to do a specific job, then your employers can expect you to put your sole focus on this for the length of the time that you're contracted for. If you're found taking extra breaks, ignoring customers, or on your phone all the time, most people would see this as just a cause for you being fired. But surely there are some cases when it's okay for an employee to be distracted from the task at hand. A waiter was working in the 84 Thai restaurant in Fort Lauderdale one evening, and from all accounts the restaurant was packed. All staff members were hurriedly trying to get orders out to the tables, but one of them noticed something happening out front. A regular customer who had just left the restaurant was being attacked as she tried to get into the car. Without a second thought, the waiter ran outside, wrestled the attacker to the floor, and took his knife off of him, and then held him on the ground with the assistance of several other passers-by until the police arrived to arrest the perpetrator. As soon as he was cuffed, the waiter returned to the restaurant and was expecting his colleagues and managers to congratulate him on a job well done. Instead, however, his boss sacked him on the spot and said that he wasn't exactly happy with the publicity that his actions would bring to the restaurant. Clearly feeling like they relied on the custom of would-be thieves instead of honest members of society, it's a ridiculous reason to have sacked the waiter, but you can't help feeling that he's probably better off not working there anymore. Number 5. Needing an inhaler. Employers have a duty of care to those that work for them, and while they have the right to expect their employees to be as efficient and productive as possible, they have to remember that every person is unique and different, and so will require help and the benefit of the doubt, particularly when it comes to medical matters. In 2016, a man identified only as JD was working in a manufacturing plant for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units in New Jersey. Paid just $12 an hour, he had no complaints about the work and was, by all accounts, an ideal employee. But one day he found himself short of breath. His supervisor wrote him up for slowing down his pace of work, and he told his supervisor that he needed to go home, which was around 3 miles away, to get his inhaler. In response to this, he was told to gather all of his belongings and was escorted to the exit and lost his job as a result. In the court case that followed, the company claimed that he had been fired for walking off the job, that he hadn't been discriminated against because of his asthma, and that he hadn't even informed the company of this condition. Although an investigation found that they were in fact more aware that he had asthma following a physical exam when he first started the job, in the end the company was forced to pay him $45,000 in compensation, equivalent to around 2 years' worth of salary. Number 4. For a 50-year-old crime. Do you think we should be held accountable for crimes we committed when we were younger? Maybe if it was still a few years ago, you might still expect to be held to account, but once a few decades have passed, you'd expect that your actions since have proved the type of person that you are. The statute of limitations means that many charges, apart from the most heinous ones, cannot be brought against you more than 7 years after the offense was committed. But amazingly, a customer service representative who had worked at Wells Fargo for 7 years was sacked because of something he had done 50 years earlier. The crime in question: he had been caught putting a cardboard cutout of a dime in a washing machine at a laundromat. But how could anyone be sacked for such a ridiculous reason? The answer was because of a new rule that had been brought in for the banking industry that prohibited people with a fraud conviction from working at financial institutions. While the law was intended to reduce the risk of fraud happening from within, it mainly affected lower-level workers who had records from a long time ago because of silly things they had done when they were kids. Number 3. Giving away a slice of cheese. When you work in hospitality, you often find yourself in a position where you're able to give things to customers, usually to help improve the image of the establishment, so they buy more or become far more likely to return in the future. It's a tried and tested technique, and it's why you may be offered a free side at a restaurant or free snacks at a bar. But employees have to be careful because some companies may see even the smallest giveaway as a means for dismissal. A McDonald's worker in the Netherlands found this out the hard way when she sold a hamburger to a colleague after they had finished work. As normally happens, after taking one bite into the burger, the colleague realized that it was a bit bland and could do with some cheese. So the worker who was still on the shift gave her a slice to put on the hamburger. This, according to management, was gross misconduct and meant that she would have been charged for a cheeseburger and not a hamburger. She was immediately fired for breaking corporate policy, and it led to one of the most expensive court cases for such a low-value item in Dutch history. The ruling found in favor of the employee, who was found to have been unfairly fired, and that a written warning would have been far more sensible response. McDonald's was forced to pay $5,900 in compensation for the last 5 months of her contract. Number 2. Behind-the-scenes videos at Disney. Have you ever passed a fountain and wondered what the water quality was actually like? That's the question Jason Jeter, an employee at Walt Disney World, found himself asking, and led to him posting a series of parody videos on TikTok, where he'd go around the various water features and drink establishments, fill up his water bottle, taste it, and give it a rating. With more than 290,000 followers, his post gained a lot of traction, but the publicity was not what Disney management wanted at all. According to them, he was giving away backstage secrets, and he received a letter that said the company, quote, "do not appreciate what you're posting," end quote. Apparently, after several cast members came forward with concerns, instead of asking him to delete the videos, he was informed that he was no longer allowed backstage, and as a result, he would be unable to perform his job requirements and was fired. Amazingly, it was the second time he had been fired by Disney in the past year, because he had previously lost his job because of the coronavirus pandemic that saw the Disney college program shut down. It seems he got the last laugh, though, because after his firing, his number of followers more than doubled to over 650,000, which now means he's able to monetize his account and earn far more than he had done in his job. Number 1. Farting too much. As humans, we all experience the same bodily functions as each other, but it seems as if this can be a fireable offense in some people's eyes. 27-year-old Daniel Cambridge was a warehouse worker for Waterstones, a nationwide bookstore in the UK, but he was sacked in 2010 for the most ridiculous reason: farting. He had been working in the warehouse for 5 months, but got a message from the employment agency telling him not to come in for any further shifts because of his apparent flatulence problem. It was so distracting to other people that there had been apparently 35 complaints about it. Cambridge didn't exactly deny that he was prone to this, something he attributed to the fact that he was taking an antidepressant called citalopram, which cites excess gas as one of the potential side effects. He couldn't believe that was the reason he lost his job, and said in an interview how annoyed he was, and that he'd have understood if he had been in a fight or been guilty of gross misconduct. But since farting is something everyone does, how could this possibly be a sackable offense? The story made national news, but neither Waterstones nor the employment agency who had hired him would comment on their reasons for terminating his contract, and it was subsequently decided that they had been well within their rights to do so. Daniel Cambridge had no choice but to look elsewhere for a job because the company refused to go back on their decision. And after this experience, he said he was focusing on trying to land a role that involved working outdoors, just in case his new colleagues had similar issues with his gas. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.